Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, it's that time of the week again when we assign the bad guys and the few good guys into
Very few.
very few. Which means it's thumbs up and thumbs down time. And I'll go first. And my first thumbs down has been the absolutely ridiculous media spin that accompanied the announcement by the United States that it was waiving sanctions against the United Nations, against the Nord Stream 2 operator. This was immediately hailed as, oh, United States, unlike Trump, really cares about the susceptibilities of its allies and really did this in order to keep the Germans happy. That is absolute, complete nonsense. The United States never has given a damn about what the Germans think. At the height of the Cold War, when you would have thought keeping in with the Germans was of absolutely imperative, the Americans just simply said, you know, we don't give a damn what Germany thinks, whether Willy Brandt, Helmut Schmidt, Helmut Kohl, we don't give a damn what any of them think. So the idea that now Biden and Blinken care, you know, about this Nord Stream 2 pipeline and how the Germans feel so strongly about it, you know, they know perfectly well, I mean, Biden and Blinken, they know you can't stop this. There's no way that this can be stopped now. It's 95% built. It's a done deal. The only reason they did this is they want to curry favor with Russia because they're absolutely determined to hold this summit that we don't know, you and I, Peter, don't know what it's supposed to achieve. And more important, the Russians don't seem to know what exactly Biden and Blinken want to achieve by this summit. But nonetheless, they're absolutely hell-bent on pursuing this. And so they gave up Trump's foolish policy of trying to stop something that couldn't be stopped. And they made the best of it with a compliant media by saying that, well, we really care about our German allies.
That's right, George. Pissing on your leg and saying it's raining.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, I have a slightly different spin on the same story, but it's number one with me as well. And I want everybody to see it here. My thumbs up is The Gaggle. You and I, because you and I got this story right from the very beginning. Right. On top of it, everyone knows that George and I are great admirers of Glenn Greenwald, and even he didn't really get it right, okay? Right. And our the good source called The Moon of Alabama pointed it out, which of course, with great glee, when I was reading and drinking my coffee, I messaged George, okay, that we got it right. We were the ultimate people that got this story right from the get-go, okay? Right. And you're absolutely right, trying to take some kind of credit where, you know, you're not even invited to the party. So why are you getting, you know, poking your nose in? Right. No. And the thing that, you know, we say, you know, where we address media narratives, okay? I mean, and this is what's so irritating to me, is that Germany does play a very big role in this story. Right. Okay, and I agree with you, the Americans usually don't even give a hoot one way or another, okay? But, I mean, the fact of the matter is this is not Putin's pipeline. This is Merkel's pipeline. And the media will never say that because then everything falls apart. And since we're on the topic here, you know, all these conservative news outlets say, you know, Russiagate's going to bleed into policy. Well, you're doing it. Conservatives are doing it now, okay? A permanent fixture of our conversation. And it is so detrimental. You can't see what's in front of you when you're wearing these tinted glasses all the time. So my thumbs up, to echo yours, is that The Gaggle got it right. A good reason to watch George and I. And we're also on Locals, thegaggle.locals.com. And, you know, we'll talk about it there as well. But this is a very important story. And this leads into one of my other thumbs up, thumbs down later about how listless the Biden foreign policy is. You're up.
No, that's exactly right. And the point that the media absolutely refused to entertain is that it was the Germans who came to the Russians and said, because it was Germany that had made an absolute hash of its energy policy, and this is something that was the site that you mentioned, Moon of Alabama, makes clear, because after the Fukushima meltdown, Angela Merkel scrapped Germany's nuclear energy program. But of course, the fossil fuels are out because of all kinds of environmental concerns and, global warming and so on. So they pretty much have nothing else other than natural gas. And so Germany becomes reliant on natural gas. And this pathway through Ukraine was a real problem for Germany, because it was, Ukraine had been siphoning off natural gas for itself. And so it was the Germans who came to the Russians and said, hey, let's get a secure natural gas pipeline that no one can mess with. It was never the Russians' idea.
A very important caveat here. This is not a government-to-government operation. This is a business-to-business operation here, which again is never mentioned in the media. So go ahead, sanction the Germans. It's not going to change anything.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. All right. So my next thumbs down. It kind of follows on what you were saying, which is how the Trumpians, and I guess Trump himself, have completely misinterpreted, misunderstood, and misused the notion of America first. Because now America first, well, in the first place, it's increasingly coming to mean Israel first. Whatever Israel wants, or whatever exactly whatever Israel wants.
We don't compare notes.
No, we do not. Israel must get. So absolutely, unconditional support for whatever Bibi wants. So that's that. And then they got the America first means getting yourself involved in all sorts of pointless conflicts, as we just mentioned with natural gas. This is an agreement signed between two sovereign countries. What on earth has this got to do with the United States? And so America first would have meant, as Trump articulated it, which we're only concerned with American interests. We're not going to waste time and energy and resources on getting into conflict that we are not in any position to settle. And so, and that's it. And now all the Ted Cruz, Mike Pompeo, every single thing, America first, and that's it. And that means telling the Germans and the Russians that they mustn't sign it, that they mustn't complete an agreement that's already 95% complete, and which in any case has absolutely nothing to do with the United States.
And plus, if you look at a lot of the, during the 11-day period of the conflict in Palestine, how many hours on Fox was chewed up by Israel first?
Right, Israel first, exactly.
Okay, yeah. It was astounding to me. Right. Okay, right. And people like Sean Hannity, he's schizophrenic. This is the only thing I can come down to. I think how is it in America's interest? We should not give a blank check to any of the parties and say, come to the negotiating. There was that inkling, but it was decades and decades ago. Now we reap what we've sown. Okay, every passing administration. All right, my thumbs down. Again, kind of a corollary what you're saying here. I'm really sick and tired on the cable and the broadsheets. And this is something that happened in the 1970s, and it has haunted us ever since, equating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. It is just unacceptable. It is anti-intellectual, and it's a political cudgel. I don't understand why smart people say these things. Well, I know why they say it, okay? Right. They don't want to be attacked. They see where the power, the balance of power is, et cetera, et cetera. They like their positions in elite power, and they're not going to stand up and say the right obvious thing, okay? What's going on there? Anyone that fires a missile, the Palestinian, the Hamas, or the Israelis into a populated area, the entire world should be outraged by it and demanding it stop, okay?
And so, go ahead, finish your
point. Just the point is that it muddies the waters in trying to understand this conflict. You and I, we want this conflict to come to an end, okay? And there are two major parties, the Palestinians and the Israelis. They both have claims, they both have grievances. That's why we need to have them sit down. But you have to force the Israelis to do it, okay? Because
I think that's right, and I think that
blank check too long.
but that's exactly it. I mean, this whole notion that, first of all, even if you oppose Israeli policies, but ultimately, even to take it to its next level, even if you oppose the existence of the state of Israel, you think, no, it is completely wrong for Israel to have created a state there in Palestine where other people were living. Even that isn't anti-Semitic, because after all, among Jews in the 19th century and beyond, there was a lot of debate about this, whether this was a good idea for Jews to set up a national state. I mean, it was a very
even further, George,
the Zionists were a minority.
But even further, a settler-based state.
Right.
Okay, because this myth of a people without a land without a people. I mean, all of this stuff here, it's all nonsense. Okay. And when the Zionist project was being designed, it was seriously talked about a settler project in Palestine, recognizing that there were people already there. Now, having said that, and I don't want one person to misunderstand this. Does it have a right to exist or not exist? It doesn't. For me, it's not an important question. It's not an important statement. It's there. We have a conflict. And how do we resolve it? We're not going to resolve it by going back to 1948 or the 1870s. We're not going to be able to do that, okay? We have to deal with the here and now, all right? And I refuse to get pulled into these ridiculous debates about moral equivalency and who has the higher ground. What we need is to end this conflict. And what we had with this one, we talked about this yesterday.
Right.
A lot of people are calling it the missile intifada. Because things have changed.
Right. But
that's why we need.
No, I think that's right. But I think just to follow up on the point that you were raising about the anti-Semitism, I mean, because we really have to make a sharp distinction here, because we know what anti-Semitism is. Anti-Semitism is an irrational hatred for Jewish people as a whole. It has nothing to do with the state of Israel, with whatever you think, with the rights and wrongs of the conflict with Palestine, rights and wrongs of what's going on in Gaza, rights and wrongs of the West Bank. That has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is an irrational hatred of the Jewish people as a whole, all Jews. And so therefore, confounding these two things, and to suggest, they're anti-Semitic, and anyone who criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic, is a complete and disgraceful pollution of the debate. And what's particularly disgraceful about it is that it's being peddled by a lot of right-wingers, conservatives, who are always indignant. But why are you bringing up these racists? You're always calling everyone who disagrees with you racist. Just because I don't like affirmative action doesn't make me a racist. You're trying to end debate by saying racist. There's a completely fair point. But then they do exactly the same thing, and even worse, by saying anti-Semitic anytime anyone criticizes Israel.
Well, and just to top it all off, you can say anything about Russians, but Russophobia is never condemned. Right. Okay, you can any caricature, any stereotype, you can say it without anyone pushing back. Right. Okay. Right. All righty.
I think is it my turn or?
Go ahead anyway, George.
No, because I think your point was the anti-Semitism.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, okay. So my next thumbs down is the Democrats who have pushed for this January the 6th commission, and they regale the House with all kinds of hysterical speeches, including AOC, who was back to the whole "I was almost murdered" routine. Now, we were within a hair's breadth of martial law in the United States. The guy with the horns, was about to seize power in the United States. So they were making all these ridiculous statements, and somehow we need to get to the truth of what happened. We need to get to the truth. Well, the one thing about all these January the 6th conspiracy-minded propagators was the truth was the last thing they've been wanting to get. I mean, well, truth. For instance, they've been hiding the truth about what happened to Brian Sicknick. You're not interested in truth about that. They've been hiding the truth about Ashley Babbitt. You're not interested in any of that. They've been hiding the truth about the fact that no one was arrested on Capitol Hill who was carrying any kinds of weapons. So, you're hiding but the truth about that.
You don't want to know about the truth about who shot Ashley.
Exactly, exactly. So the last thing, they want truth. It's like saying that all those people who were banging on about Russiagate for 4 years, they wanted to get to the truth of Trump-Russia collusion. No, they wanted to use this as a political weapon to cudgel their enemies. But the whole idea that they're going to go around saying, well, we need to get to the truth. And they're always stupid Republicans who are going to buy into that. Well, maybe we should get to the truth of what happened to January. They'll say, whoa, what a good idea. 35 Republicans voted for this democratic measure.
Okay. Well, I have an unusual thumbs up. When Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was in Iceland, meeting on the sidelines with Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, I think it was a Danish journalist asked Blinken, is the United States going to buy Iceland? Greenland, excuse me, Greenland. And he said, no, the U.S. is not going to buy Greenland. So I just want to put that to rest, everyone. That story is over. The U.S. is not intent on buying Greenland from Denmark. Okay, so shelve that one, put that in a file, done.
I actually thought that was a hilarious move on Trump's part when he suddenly announced, I think we're going to buy.
You know what was hilarious? When I was reading antiwar.com, I always read the main stories and then the viewpoints, and then they have all the breakdown. And for some reason, it just caught my eye. Greenland, I hit the link, and I had totally forgotten about the story. But somebody actually followed up in a journalistic fashion to see what the situation is with Greenland, and it's been clarified.
That's very good. Yeah, I also have a thumbs up. My thumbs up is kind of an odd sort of person. It's this President Lopez Obrador of Mexico, who has an extremely low opinion, justifiably low opinion of the Biden administration. Again, it's part of the sort of media delusion that somehow the rest of the world is so happy Trump's gone. Oh, great, America's back. Biden, safe pair of hands. This is the kind of person we want to be dealing with. For someone like Obrador in Mexico, he actually liked Trump's policy on immigration, because the whole of the immigration racket, and that it was run by the cartels, this flow of people was just devastating to Mexico. I mean, it was, because it was turning the country over to the cartels, to the drug cartels, to the people cartels, and so by Trump's policies of saying you can't come into the country, you have to wait in Mexico, that acted as a disincentive for people to come through Mexico, because they didn't want to stay in Mexico. They wanted to come into the United States, apply for amnesty, and then disappear in somewhere in the United States. Same thing with the countries in that triangle of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. They suddenly said, hey, you want amnesty, you have to stay in your country, make an application for amnesty. You can't just turn up at the border. We're not going to entertain it. So this was actually very good for Mexico. And that's why Lopez Obrador, who was a kind of a left-wing populist, actually had very good relations with Trump. And he has very bad relations with the Biden people, cannot stand Harris with her half-baked ideas. We've got to get to the root causes of Central America: poverty, inequality, social injustice. I mean, how are you going to address those issues?
For a vice president, a woman who grew up in Canada in an upper middle class environment, and she's going to be the czar against racism and peddle critical race theory, and and get all the suburban whites to feel guilty. You know what Biden's immigration program does? Let's just look at Mexico. It hurts a lot of brown people.
Absolutely.
Kamala Harris.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, and for these countries themselves, I mean, I think that I think Tucker Carlson had an interview with the president of El Salvador, he said, I don't like America's open door policy. We want to keep people here. We need people. We need educated people. We need people who can do things. We don't want them just to they finish school and then off they go to the United States. And that's the attitude of Lopez Obrador and others. So they actually like Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Plus, what you do is you delegitimize the very nature of the nation state,
Right.
because these people that move from all of these countries that move into the U.S. somehow get to stay there legally or illegally, and then these countries where they come from, they're dependent on remittances. So there's no real economic development in, organic indigenous development. Everyone's just waiting on Western Union, which is one of the great criminal operations, in my opinion, because of what they charge people. Yes. Okay. And so what it does, it's such a huge distortion. And on top of it, and I don't want anyone to call us out here, stop messing with their domestic politics. All right? Stop it.
That's right.
It's such a bad habit that the U.S. has had since its foundation. Stop meddling in these people's politics and let them develop organically look at Venezuela. You can say all you want about the Venezuelan model. There's a lot to be said about it, but it pulled a lot of people out of poverty, okay? They didn't need to go someplace else. They could stay home. I mean, the Washington's whole approach to south of the border is just as confused as ever, except for a very short time when Donald Trump was president. I give him that.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And that's why he actually had very good relations. Everyone thought, oh, he's going to have terrible relations. Oh, look, you remember he called the Mexicans rapists and murderers. No, he actually had very good relations with Mexico. And remember, Lopez Obrador was pretty much the last person to recognize Biden as president. He waited right till the very end. He said, oh, all right, yeah, you're president if you say so. So, and he's made the very point you just made. Stop messing around and interfering in internal Mexican politics. But the Biden people, they don't listen to anything like that.
It's a bad imperial colonial habit. Okay. All right. This is kind of a general one here. A thumbs down on Fox News. Okay. I appreciate people like Laura Ingraham on discussing critical race theory. I think it's very important, and I think some of her guests are very enlightening. But this is a cover for going back to the Bush model of politics. They like to claim, they like to show their populist credentials. They're anything but, okay? This is old style. Right. Nobody cares about it. Nobody wants to hear about it. And you can see what they're doing is they're playing the cultural war, okay? Which you and I, we have interest in it because, it's not that, I want to make this clear to you. You don't have to be interested in the culture wars. The culture wars are interested in you, okay? Now, we deal with that. But I like to look at the superstructure, okay? I like to look at the economy. Complaining people don't want to work and they want to live on welfare. Well, why don't you pay them a decent wage, okay? Pay people decent wages. Okay, and if you look at the top 500, Forbes top 500, these people made out like bandits, literally bandits over the last, 16 months or so, okay? Don't tell me there isn't money, okay? And don't shame people for wanting to work for what they're less than what they're worth. Fox News needs to learn a little bit more about economics instead of ideology, okay? I'm sick and tired of it, all right? Because what they do is they put all this covering on it to get you angry, and this is what the left criticizes Fox for, and they're absolutely right. I mean, the left does it too in different ways. Okay,
but I think that just following up on that is that and then they wrap themselves up in the idea that they're populist. So by embracing the cause of untrammeled capitalism, the rule of corporations, the idea that corporations can do what they like to their employees have no rights, that's populism? I mean, it's such a bizarre notion. But again, it's part of this Republican DNA, like Ronald Reagan, the great populist. And he was a great populist. He looked after his fat cat friends. I mean,
he was a libertarian, if anything else.
If you're a populist, you would be, favoring policies that organize labor rights. That's a populist. Something that Richard Nixon was. I mean, and that's why Kevin Phillips, who wrote a number of books in the 80s, was that Nixon was a populist. Reagan was not a populist. And that's a very, very important point. One supported workers' rights, and the other one opposed them and fought against them.
You and I have to do a separate one on the Nixon presidency because it's so misunderstood and so distorted. You're up.
The next up is a thumbs down. I recently came across, I don't know where you heard about this, Peter. There's a historian, an English historian named Richard Cohen, who wrote a book very recently, or it was to be about to be published. It's called The History Makers. So it's a history of the historians, starting from the great man himself, Thucydides, up to the present day. So it's a big work, 750 pages. Everyone's in it. Gibbon, Tacitus, Macaulay, all the big names, Mommsen. But the American publisher, Random House, said to him, well, I know it's 750 pages, but the problem is that,
white people.
Exactly, it's all white people. Where are the black historians? So he said, okay, he went back and so, added another 40 pages in which, he included, I think, Frederick Douglass, Dubois, Booker T. Washington, none of whom are incidentally really historians, but, he did it to keep the publisher happy, and the publisher canceled anyway. And so this apparently major work of history has simply been canceled by Random House.
But I think it's going to be published in the UK.
It is going to be published in the UK, but in the United States, yeah, it was random.
I want to read that book.
Yeah, Random House, said, no, we don't. But the amazing thing is that he's delivered the book, delivered it on time, I assume. He delivered what he promised in his proposal. And you cancel because you don't like what he wrote. Now, those issues about, whether he's brought in enough black historians, book reviewers can make that point if they want to make it, if that's the kind of point they want to make. But the idea of canceling a book for essentially ideological reasons, who are these people? Who are these people at Random House who feel qualified to make these pronouncements like, well, not enough black historians? So that's a real thumbs down for Random House. But it's kind of what the publishing world has now become.
Yeah, well, again, it's an attack on real scholarship, okay? You have to, it's just so much, it's like a political, ideological police state, okay? Right. You have to conform. You're absolutely, let the reviewers, go after the guy. But the publisher?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get the UK edition, okay? Because I was trained as a historian and love that kind of stuff, and I encourage people to also.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting topic. So.
Okay. All right, a thumbs up. Scott Atlas, okay, he was part of Trump's COVID reaction team, and he was pulled over the coals by the liberals from the get-go, okay? He talked about common sense things like herd immunity, things like this, the efficacy of masks, which, by the way, George, he's been proven right on everything that he said, unlike the pontiff Fauci. Scott Atlas was on Hannity, and this is one of the low points of Hannity's entire career, in my opinion, is that, of course, Hannity likes his little jingle about, Biden isn't there, the lights are off, no one's home, that whole gig that he pulls that's really tiresome. And Scott Atlas was on it, and he tried to force him to agree with me, okay? Which, talk show hosts rarely should do that, okay? And Scott Atlas said, no, I'm not going to answer it. And he did the right thing. It's up until Trump, physicians and doctors, it was a rule. You don't comment on someone that's not your patient. It's unprofessional. It's unprofessional to comment on it, and it's unprofessional to make claims that you're in no position to raise. And Hannity always says, "I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician." Well, you talk like one and stop it, okay?
I think that's a very good point. And if you remember, the psychiatrists got themselves into trouble in 1964 when a whole bunch of them signed a letter claiming that Republican nominee Barry Goldwater was clearly mentally disturbed. And then there was a huge outrage about this because, hey, these are trained clinicians, trained medical practitioners, and they have no business offering a diagnosis about someone whom they have not personally examined. And the rule was formulated after that outrageous intervention in the 64 election. No diagnoses about anyone that you haven't personally examined. And Scott Atlas was doing exactly that. He's saying, look, I'm not in any position to pronounce, one way or the other. And remember, Hannity did the same thing with Hillary Clinton in 2016. You remember how he went on and on about how she was staggering up the stairs or staggering down the stairs, and then the time that she was pushed into the the back of a limo. I mean, you can say, okay, that's an interesting item, but you can't talk about it because you're not a medical practitioner, and no medical practitioner is going to pronounce on something that he has no personal knowledge of. But Hannity just keeps doing this, and it's just it is.
Well, and he criticized CNN and MSNBC, questioning Trump's mental state. Okay, and then he did. I mean, no self-reflection here. I mean, I just find it very, very shameful. You're up.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it's right. Yeah, I've got another thumbs down, which is the University of California system, which I think you're familiar with. Has now said that it will no longer accept SAT and ACT scores from student applicants. In fact, student applicants are prohibited from even putting down on their application form their SAT or ACT scores. This came about because some people, usually representing minorities, sued the UC system, saying, okay, SATs are racist. And then the University of California succumbed and said, yeah, we're right. We're not, and so they came to a settlement. Now, what's amazing about this is that, clearly there's been a long problem with the SATs, ACT, which is African-American students do significantly badly in them. Then come the whites,
Asian Americans.
Asians. The Asians, best of all, exactly. So you got Asians, whites, and then blacks. And they've been jiggling around, and they've been playing around with the SAT. Every few years, they keep redesigning the SAT so that somehow they could change that result, that division. Never changes. Or, whatever changes they introduce, it's always the same. Again, Asians, whites, blacks. Now, there are all sorts of reasons for poor educational accomplishments. But the idea that you get rid of a measure, and that somehow, it's like saying, well, I don't like the fact that here's a patient who's got a very high temperature. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of the thermometer, and then the patient is cured.
There's no fever because there's no thermometer.
That's right. But it's also kind of amusing that, first of all, the University of California caved in this way. They didn't even try to fight it. They just came to a settlement. But it's also it's kind of similar. I mean, similar to the settlement. You remember the Georgia governor made before the election with Stacey Abrams. Forcing people to show up at the polling places and showing a photo ID. That's racist. That's voter suppression. Okay, so should we sign an agreement and saying no one has to show up anymore, no one has to present an ID? Okay, well we'll just have a settlement. So in a way we have a settlement resulting in an absolute nonsense result, which is now there's really no measure of intellectual attainment.
Yeah, speaking of the SAT. I would be very curious. I'd like to see scores from Asians, whites, and blacks, and browns, and just have one kind of question on the side. Is there a father in your home?
Right.
Did you have a father growing up? Right. I'll tell you, that would probably is the most important indicator.
Yeah.
Right there. Okay. Did you come from a stable family? People, I'm going to get jumped on all over for this, but when I was in high school, there were, out in Southern California, there were a lot of Asian students, and none of them could go out and play, socialize until they got their homework done, and both parents looked at it and made sure it was right, okay? I mean, because they believe, rightfully, is that that's the key to their success. My brother married a Chinese woman from Vietnam She was quote unquote called a boat person. She came with no money, just with the clothes on the back on her back, and within 3 or 4 years, she was perfectly proficient in English. She had a good job. Why? Because she put her nose to the grindstone and she did. You're a victim. We're going to take care of you. No, just get me an open path. I can take care of it. Okay. In Vietnam, they don't give us anything. I don't expect anything from anyone here. I just want an opportunity. Okay. I'm going to get people going to throw, arrows and stones at me for saying that.
Well,
okay.
But I think it's a very important point. I mean, we don't have to go into the whole issues of inherent intelligence or whatever, because the point about is you're talking about the Asians is they're not saying, hey, we are really smart, so we don't have to work. We can just sit down, do the exams and do the SATs, and we're just going to score really high because we have this innate brilliance. No, they actually go work, do the homework. And when it comes to the SAT, they go to the SAT test prep centers, spend hours and hours there prepping for how to pass the SATs. That's what they do through a lot of work. It's not saying, well, we're just so smart and you're so dumb, and so we're just going to ace the SATs. That's not how it works.
No, because it's a value in itself for that community. It's a value in itself. It's not just a given. Okay.
Right.
And I mean, the amazing thing is that the Asians are competing against Asian. I mean, it's intense. It's intense. Okay. Right. I only have admiration for merit, and I have admiration for skill and hard work. Okay. And the University of California, thankfully, the damage they did to me is almost completely out of my system. Finally, it had taken decades, but finally, I feel free of what they tried to do to me. Okay. The programming does work. The best form of it is to get away from it. Okay. All right. My last one here, kind of very general. The Biden foreign policy is just completely adrift. I don't see any rhyme or reason to it, with the only exception with the acceptance, and this came under the Trump administration, of great power rivalry. That's fine. As a matter of fact, I actually buy into that because that's how the international system has worked, I don't know, since the Greeks, okay? And so I accept that. But again, you and I kind of harp on this. So if it's going to be great power competition, why are you with equal passion going after the Chinese and the Russians? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, okay? And disengagement from the Middle East. Really? Is that just a word or is that an action? Because if you go into the minutia, George, leaving Afghanistan, well, doesn't really mean leaving Afghanistan, okay? They can't even let that go.
No, I think
great power rivalry and stay in the quagmire called the Middle East. These people are smart, huh?
Right. No, that's exactly right. And again, when you come to the Middle East, yeah, it's sort of, yes, disengagement, but not really. So, and when it comes to this great power rivalry, again, there doesn't seem to be. I mean, they learned from Trump, and here they've completely reversed themselves. You remember, it was only a couple of years ago when the Democrats were dismissing any talk about China being a serious problem for the United States. So they reversed themselves, adopted Trump's policy, but they haven't actually, followed through on that. So, they think we'll get this summit with Putin, and then what? I mean, what's the plan here? Now, if they really, really wanted to get Russia on its side and to be, and to somehow, at least be between the United States and China, they would have to deliver on some of the things that the Russians want, which is, and the Russians will say, okay, no more NATO expansion. We want to pledge on no more NATO expansion. You get the hell out of Ukraine. Don't mess around with Ukraine anymore. Stop, messing around in the Baltics and making trouble for us there. And
get out of Syria.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, say, and then in Central Asia as well. In other words, stop making life a pain in the neck for us. Then we can have good relations. But the idea that we'll have a summit, but then you're not actually going to address any of Russia's concerns, which they have repeatedly made. They've said this over and over again. what it is that we don't like and what it is that's giving us concern. If you're not going to do that, then all of this stuff is, we want stable relations with Russia, and now you think Russia's going to come over to your side. Okay, great. Let's go fight China. It's childish.
I would like to remind Secretary of State Blinken about a certain gentleman named Joseph Borrell, okay? I mean, if you want to have a summit of Russian concessions, well, you know, everyone's going to go to the Black Sea resort and relax. I mean, what's the point, okay? I mean, the thing is they're painting themselves into a corner. If they think they're going to get the concession summit, well, it's not going to happen.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. That if you really want to get Russia on your side, I mean, leaving aside, the issue that, that train has left the station. But if you really want it, you are going to have to make concessions to Russia. And Russia has made clear over and over again what it is that they expect. And then at the minimum, as we discussed the other day, at the minimum, give us our diplomatic compounds back, because we are really pissed that you stole them from us.
And on top of it, to be fair, to give fair warning, just in case, and this is for people that follow us here on the Gaggle, be prepared to bring your own chair.
Yes, exactly.
I'm done.
Yeah, me too. I'm done. All right, Peter. So that's the thumbs ups and thumbs downs for the week. So some people can breathe easy, but some people's life is now a nightmare. But we intend to be back.
Unrelenting.
Unrelenting. And we will be administering our appropriate punishments and condemnations same time next week. We are now on locals.
Thegaggle.locals.com.
Thegaggle.locals.com. Please go there. Please support us to whatever extent you can. We're also on Rumble. And if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.